introducing our speaker, Harold Deblander. Harold is a certified divorce real estate expert and a real estate broker associate with Sotheby's International Realty, focusing on the counties of San Francisco, Marin, and San Mateo. He has deep, extensive experience handling real property in court-related cases within probate and family law, with a focus in working with and resolving high conflict situations, including those involving domestic violence and uncooperative spouses. Harold has also been trained in collaborative practice. As a real estate broker, his clients and peers seek his deeply analytical and strategic professional advice for market trends and conditions, as well as property valuations and innovative marketing approaches. Harold's comprehensive background in real estate development provides him with a unique perspective into complex real estate problem solving, construction, remodeling, and value-added strategies. Harold was raised and educated in Belgium and Spain and graduated with a Master in Business Administration from Belgium's first-ranked university. He is fluent in 4 languages: French, Flemish, Spanish, and English. If you have questions for Harold, I am sure he can answer them in any of those languages. Please use Zoom's chat feature to enter your questions, and we will try our best to get to as many as possible after Harold's presentation. With that, I will turn things over to Harold.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Teresa and Ariel, for your kind invitation at this joint event between the family law and the real estate section of your bar association. And thank you to all of you who are in attendance today. The goal for the next hour will be to review the impact that COVID has had over the past year on real estate, but also identify new trends and patterns that have emerged and will influence what we do as practitioners in our respective fields. A little bit of a heads up, my allergies have kicked in with a vengeance this year. And so I apologize in advance. It is very possible that I may be coughing a little bit once in a while. Please bear with me if that happens. I'll take a bit of water and we'll move on. So on the agenda today, we're going to start by a real estate markets update, starting at a micro level and zooming down on Contra Costa and the cities of Contra Costa. Also, an update on shelter-in-place selling process, mortgage and finance, the importance of writing orders with clear instructions, and then some title consideration as well, and then what to expect looking ahead. So, market update. Well, the good news comes from the public health front, where new cases have started to drop. It's not yet showing in death tally, but we expect that will come very soon as well. So we're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel as vaccines are starting to roll out into people's arms in 2021. The broader economy continues to recover. We have a great rebound of the overall economy with a GDP on the third quarter that really shot up, and 4% again in the fourth quarter. The source of that growth is broad-based. So you can see this is here the sum of the 4%, and it is going across various sectors of the economy. We're not just hanging our hats on consumers with a stimulus check anymore. On the positive side, we can see that non-residential structures are going up for the first time in almost a year, which is positive. This slide, I show that the presentation that I made last year in April at the San Francisco Bar Association. And at the time, the unemployment had just risen to 36.5 million in 8 weeks. It ended up going way above that, above 40 million. But what we can see is that after the biggest decline in recorded history, it is now coming back across the state. And we can see here on the East Bay, we're back at a 6.9%. Marin was a 9.5. The San Francisco was a 6.9 as well. This chart is sorted by biggest decline to shortest decline, with the hardest hit being on the left, going to the right. This is a question that I get asked all the time. How is it possible that in the middle of this massive recession, fires, unemployment in the United States and in California that came at 16%, how comes we have such a hot market? Well, to understand that, we need to look at where the highest jobless concentration came from. And it's mostly in the lowest paying wages, hospitality, high contact businesses. The high wages, finance, management, real estate, and high tech in the Bay Area have been very narrowly affected. Not only that, housing has become very, very important as we're all sheltering in place and have to work from home. And so for those buyers that probably were on the fence before, now that they have 2 or 3 kids at home, homeschooling, buyers have decided, it's time for us to jump in. And so that's what we've seen. Almost 90% of the job loss happened in wages that paid less than $100,000 a year. And so for us in the Bay Area, that's why we haven't seen that much of an effect, because a lot of wage earners are above that 100,000 threshold. Doesn't mean that people have been suffering, of course, but that explains partly the reason. Another macroeconomic factor that we need to understand is that we still are at an historic low for interest rates. I love to look at this 50-year pan out of interest rates progression, because you probably remember that somebody that you knew may have been bragging back in the 80s about having a 12.5 interest rate on their mortgage, right? And now people are starting to freak out because they can get a 2.6% or it goes above 3%, right? And so we forget how high those interest rates went and really how low they are today. Those interest rates, given everything that's going on with the pandemic, aren't going anywhere. And I suspect we're going to have another year or two of low rates and staying low for the foreseeable future. Now, another fundamental where the kinds of loans that people were taking back in 2006 versus 2008. And I do like to make this comparison for those of us that still have a bit of PTSD from 2008. Maybe some of you had floor plans that you couldn't cash on because the property went under and the equity got sucked out of the house, right? And so I want to take a second to take a look at those comparisons with 2005, 2019. So I think this applies also for the clients that you may have that are today sitting on the fence, right? Should I sell the property? I think that, or they're afraid of selling, the property may go down, or those that want to buy a property and are waiting for the next wave of foreclosure to come. I don't really see that happening. So the difference is that all the fundamental issues that were bubbling under the surface in 2005 aren't really present today. Indeed, in 2005, half of the lending, 47.3%, were 5-1 ARM options, those loans that we called ninja loans, where all you had to do was fog a mirror, prove that you had a breath, and you could get a loan. Take my word for it, I make that much income, believe me. Compared to today, we're at 15.6%, which is a lot lower. It, again, doesn't inoculate us from the effect of last year's crisis. We showed on the previous GDP numbers, on the labor, that we were hit very, very hard. But this is an economic shock to what was a relatively strong and healthy economy versus what we had before, with cascading snowball effect, seeing the demise of Bear Stearns and those other giants. We're not going to see a 30 to 40% decrease in value and foreclosures going back to where we used to be. So if we're looking at another sign of the health of this real estate market, buyers have a lot more skin in the game. In 2006, homeowners had this idea that they were rich because they had all this equity. And so they cashed it out, went on a trip to Europe, bought a car. In 2018, the big majority of those refis are cashing at least 5% of their equity. But if you look at the yellow line, the volume is very low compared to what it was before. The rate has been low for a few years already, and people have managed to lock in their equity already, which wasn't the case before. Here we're comparing the dollars that were cashed out, and you can see this massive pike in 2006, 2007, where we were cashing out $100 billion a month of equity out of the market. At this stage right now, we're only at a third of that in that it was in 2008. And if we compare the underlying value of the property securing the cash out refi, it's the highest it's ever been as well. So the percentage is much lower, and we still have a lot of equity and skin in that game. So even if somebody has a bad job situation and loses their job during the pandemic, the owner isn't necessarily going to send the keys back to the bank, because they can still sell their property with the equity that they have and do relatively well in a low inventory, high demand scenario like the one we have right now. So this is a critical distinction that is going to prevent that wave of foreclosures. Salma Hep is an economist that I follow. She's the deputy chief economist at CoreLogic. And she had a great analysis of forbearances that took place, where a big chunk of COVID-related forbearance had already exited. This was back in December, at 41% back then. And if we look at the way they exited, it's even more encouraging, because 73% of those forbearances are currently performing. And those are people that entered into a forbearance just in case, or just to be safe, a temporary loss of job, and now they're back on track. But what is even more encouraging is that a full 15% have already paid off the forbearance in full. And of course, you have the 12% that are delinquent. But again, we're not talking about over 50% delinquency threshold. That would be concerning. The bottom line is this: both the economy, sustained expansion, the translation to the job market, coupled with the structural shifts in the importance of housing with the rates that we're seeing, means that we have a really hot real estate market right now, and that the year-to-date mortgage applications are going up as well. Double digits, which is better than the past 7 months, with buyers having more flexibility on where to buy. Here we're looking at the request for showing. We can see as well that the request for showing tell the same story, up 12 to 16% on a year-to-year basis. So this is all a good sign that we are in a very active real estate market. Here we can see the sharp drop right here in May 2020, in the first half of the year, where basically the real estate market came to a screeching halt. But what is been truly amazing to watch is how quickly it rebounded with also an increase where we were compared to last year, 28%. So we didn't only make up for the lost ground that we had in May, we also went to the highest level we've ever had in 15 years. It is truly amazing, given, again, the pandemic, the fires, everything else that we've seen happening. So just to compare, this is again the slide that I used back in May at a CLE, I think in San Mateo, and you had at the time all the indicators were negative. The sales were dropping 50%, the price was going down, the inventory was going up. Compare this to how we finished the year, and like I said, it is truly astonishing how everything recovered. We ended up with a 28% year-to-year difference. And this is again at the California level. In the Bay Area, in some instances, it's been more. The price that went up 16%, and inventory that went down again. Amazing. So we're also seeing that the higher price segments, especially above 2 million, is extremely strong. And that is going to be the case again in the Bay Area in particular, with the top end doing really well, up 80%, 35% compared to where we were before. So who is buying what? Where are the buyers coming from? Well, it's no longer investors, the same way we saw it in 2006. As a matter of fact, the investor percentage of buyers right now is at this lowest it's been in a decade, 8.1%. And when investors buy, they mostly buy to hold, not to flip, which is also a big difference from the last time. International buyers, due to COVID restrictions and the pandemic, are fewer and far between as well. Lowest it's been in a very long time, 1.8%. So we don't have as many investor or international buyers flooding the market in the Bay Area. So who is buying? The vacation home market has really been exploding as well. And this is also an indicator of COVID, right? Where we, the population that had the means decided to spend COVID in style and get away from the high density centers, and places like the wine country, like Tahoe, like the coastal areas have been going through the roof in the past few months. It's also been a great way for people to diversify from stocks, right? Real estate still being appealing as a tool for the diversification. The first-time home buyers have been the biggest share, almost 40%, the highest in the past 10 years. 2 out of 5 homes were sold to first-time home buyers. It's also a factor that may have contributed in that is the fact that with fewer homeowners putting their homes on the market, either to buy up or buy down, avoiding to move in the middle of a pandemic. So that's also a possible factor. 2 of them together means that first-time home buyers have really made the majority. This is something that I find extremely interesting as well, again, to appease the post-traumatic stress disorder of some of us as far as 2006 coming back. Those first-time home buyers have also more skin in the game. They are more affluent. 1/3 puts at least 20% down versus only 23% before. Another one that is fascinating is that only 10% in 2020 came in with 0 down versus 40% in 2006. So we're seeing we are no longer in a 2008, 2006 territory. The buyers have a very different profile that makes for a much robust and resistant real estate market, avoiding the bubble that we saw back 10 years ago. That being said, there is still a lot of healing ahead of us. So we're seeing in dark blue the jobs that have been recovered, and in light blue what still needs to happen. And you can see here the East Bay is roughly in the 34, 35 percentile. So even though the economy is starting to kick back in again, we still have a lot of work to be done in order to recover everything. And this still has to be taken seriously. We still have the unknown effect of new COVID variants, new closures that may come down the road, how efficient the virus, the vaccine is against the virus. And especially as we're seeing some markets opening their doors without mask mandates, who knows the impact that that's going to have. I was listening to a program this morning on Forum where they were talking about different pockets of COVID cases surging again. So hopefully we'll be able to keep that under control. So what's been the local impact in Contra Costa in particular? And so I would advise you to take what you read in the press with a grain of salt. Those are broad brush statements that they're making. And usually those are the ones that your clients will come to you when they are, I know they come to me saying that, look at this, my house must be worth 5 times what it was worth a year ago. Not necessarily the case. I will tell you, those are the trends that we're seeing happening. And the first one is that remote work is massive at this point. We can work from home. There is homeschooling taking place. So a lot of buyers are looking for more space for a yard, and location-wise, they can work from anywhere, right? You don't need to be in San Francisco anymore or in the Silicon Valley. You can buy a house in Contra Costa. You can buy a house in the wine country and be a few hours away, commute once or twice per week, and work at home the rest of the time, right? So this is something that will remain even when the offices reopen. We're seeing an exodus of high price, high density markets from a rental perspective, right? Where we're seeing San Francisco basically having an exodus of its rental base, but also buyers that are tired of those very high prices and going to surrounding areas to San Francisco, for instance, like Marin, San Mateo, or going away from expensive suburban areas like Marin, like San Mateo, now like Alameda, to other areas that may be more affordable. So there is a disconnect that I'm noting between the expectations of buyers and sellers, where buyers are under the impression that because we have had this massive pandemic and all these other woes that we've had to deal with in the past year, that the price are going to be reflective of that. And we're not seeing that on the ground right now. Actually, it's quite the contrary, plus 20%, 28% in some instances. And we're back to multiple offers and above asking. And so that disconnect is definitely there. The sooner the buyer can come to that conclusion, the sooner they will get the keys. The Mortgage Banker Association also noted that over 865 women have been affected by the pandemic. Not unlike certain minorities, women have been hit hard. They're usually the ones that stay home, that have stayed home with the children and sacrifice their career in order to do that. And so we're going to see that in family law specifically, where women's income potential has been reduced, maybe their debt ratios have increased. And so as values that are at an all-time high, I'm afraid that we're going to see less buyouts and more property sold as it relates to family law, and especially when women are concerned. So let's take a look at Contra Costa, and I'll go through this slide as well with certain cities within Contra Costa County, but it's very much in line with the story that I was telling earlier, namely that the price, the median price has gone 28.7% for the entire country compared to last year. The days on market are extremely low. 8 days, I mean, it's 1 week and the property is gone. And we're seeing that active listings are at a sharp decline. So we don't have as much inventory. We already didn't have inventory before, but today we have even less inventory. And that's true in Contra Costa. It's true where I am in San Francisco, in my area as well. And so this is across the Bay Area. So we're seeing here medium price going up, new listings. You can really see here the seasonality of the market in Contra Costa is really well pronounced. You can really see the waves of the seasonality. And then here, that's where you have COVID happening. So it broke that new listing feed that we normally have up until the spring. And after that, we saw that it really shot up again, dropped for the holidays, and now we're going back up. Days on market, way down. This to me is really incredible as well. And then, medium days on market we already looked at. Month of supply, same thing. It's going down very, very quickly. So we're having a situation where there is more demand, less inventory, and that is going, and interest rates are historically low. That's a recipe for prices going up even more in the next coming months. Now, what I've done here is compare cities within Contra Costa, and we'll go from lower to high. And we'll see that places like Antioch went up. The trend that you're going to see here is an increase in price. And also, as we go into the higher price point, I want you to take a look at the amount of inventory, active listings that are available. And so you'll see Antioch went up 15%, 8 days on market, only 30 properties. San Pablo, plus 46.5%. That is staggering to me. Again, a sign of the exodus from San Francisco to an area where buyers can buy a single family home. Only 9 properties, minus 10%. Concord, 20% up. And now we're starting to see the amount of properties going down. Pleasant Hill, 20% up at 940. We're almost at 1 million, 19 properties. And now 1.2 million for Moraga, 6 active listings. So we're seeing that like I said, the higher you go, the more the inventory is compressed. And that is also why we've seen at the state level, why the price point above 2 million hasn't grown so much. There is even less inventory at that price point and more demand, especially in a wealthy area like the Bay Area is. The next slide I wanted to show you is to put a grain of salt in everything that I've talked. Of course, these are blanket statements for an entire city, right? But as a real estate expert, you need to be able to slice and dice the data depending on where the property is located. So I'll show you for San Francisco, for instance, this is a sign that shows the median price for the entire city in single family homes. If you're talking about condos in my market, condos downtown have taken a sharp drop. They're starting to pick up again, which is a good sign. But end of last year, beginning of this one, condos downtown went down like a brick. And so if you're reading the press and you're thinking, oh my God, San Francisco, we're back again, everything is fine. It is not. It depends on the property type. It depends as well at the various price points, right? So you'll see that, again, in my city, above 2.5 million, we've seen a sharp increase compared to the average of the city. And then here, if we're comparing in blue, Pacific Heights has gone even more in overdrive, right? And so you need to know the specifics of your cases, the specifics of your clients, their employment history, the location of the property, the condition, and also the situation, right? Do they need money yesterday? Is there domestic violence? Do we have a child custody issue, right? The temperament of your clients. Do we have an in-spouse that's sabotaging the sale? all of those things matter and are going to affect your transaction. And you better have somebody that understands it and knows how to deal with this. So what does that mean in terms of conducting business in real estate with shelter in place? Well, it's gotten better. We still can have open houses. Sunday open house, still not possible. We can show properties, but it has to be by appointment. Only two to three people, depending on where you're located, can be in the house at the same time in intervals of 15 minutes. After that, you need to wipe clean all the surfaces and circulate fresh air. It is not efficient at all, but at least we're able to show properties, let people inside. Before that, it was completely blocked, and we couldn't have neither broker tour, neither open house. It was completely dead. Everything was virtual. There's also some new paperwork that's been created specifically to address the crisis. This one, the PED, the property entry, is a document that needs to be sent prior to showing each property. The one that you see in red has to be hanged in the front of the property that is being shown. So in this sorry, in this environment, being able to showcase the property virtually has become very, very important, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, I think that those restrictions are going to be loosened, which is great, as we're moving down the tier system. But in the midst of the pandemic, being able to showcase a property without being able to have access to it was paramount. And the way I've done that is by using virtual staging, right? So we couldn't get stagers in, we couldn't get painters in. And so the way to showcase the property in a warmer way was to use virtual staging, something that I would suggest to clients, for instance, that may not have a budget to do a natural staging. Virtual staging is cheaper. Another thing here, again, this is for properties that are more dated. I'm thinking again, in the case of family law, the parties cannot agree on who is going to pay or manage the repairs of the property. Well, there is a way we can show buyers who most of the time lack the potential to see the potential of a property, the vision to see what a property could be, is to do some virtual staging there as well, where this is basically an example of the work that I would have done had I been able to put my little fingers on it and prepare it for market. Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. So the alternative is to show buyers what the potential is, so that they remain engaged in the process. Same thing for this one. Of course, the 3D modeling, where you're able to walk the property in a 3D model. I'm not going to stay too long on this. I was told in previous presentation that some participants were getting a little dizzy, but I just wanted to show you a few rounds. This allows you to go inside the property. It's a bit like a dollhouse in 3D. You can move it in different directions and get a feel for the space without being inside the property. I have sold a few properties in the city, sight unseen, where the buyer was in Santa Barbara, for instance, and didn't want to drive up. Everything, he bought the property without seeing it once in person. Now, as far as mortgage and financing are concerned, there too, there's been some changes that have been afoot due to the COVID. The disclaimer that I will give is that I am not a mortgage broker. These are just observations that I have made and recorded in my experience dealing with banks and mortgage and lenders, etc., that I would like to pass on to you, because I think they will, they're useful and you need to be aware of them because they will affect your cases as well. The bottom line is this: things just moved slower right now. That's the first takeaway. If you remember anything about this section, it's slower and it's more complicated. Slower in that because of COVID, a form, for instance, the IRS has to review tax returns and cross-reference them. The lender needs to cross-reference them with IRS. Well, IRS right now doesn't have all its personnel working. Some have been furloughed. Some offices are completely closed due to COVID. Not everybody is able to work from home, so that takes more time. Appraisals, same thing. A family law appraisal right now, you should be prepared to wait. Most family law appraisers also do regular appraisals, and they are swamped with orders from lenders for purchases and refis. Refis are very, very big right now with the rates that we have. So I'll skip that. I was going to talk about the difference between a family law appraisal and a mortgage appraisal, but we can skip that. The bottom line is this: the time is not on your side. If you're having employment changes, for instance, due to COVID, those also affect your scores and your ratios and your ability to get a loan. And so I invite you, if some assumptions were made a year ago, 2 years ago, some cases take a while before they go through the process. But if you made some assumptions even 6 months ago on the ability of one spouse or the other to qualify for a mortgage, I highly recommend you revisit those right now with a professional. I recommend a certified divorce lending professional, a CDLP, so that they clearly understand what is going on in your area of practice. It is a specialization that I believe is very worthwhile. And if you need a referral, I'm happy to put you in touch with the guy that I use. He's absolutely fantastic. Blow your socks off. But bottom line is this: it's going to take more time. In terms of mortgage approvals, because of all the forbearances that we've talked about, because of the messages that we were hearing in the press with the president at the time, some governors saying that it was okay not to pay your mortgage anymore, and some people actually doing that. Lenders, in turn, have strengthened their guidelines to qualify for a mortgage. And so we, again, have more requirements on documentation. It used to be that you start the lending process, you submit your package, and then you're done. The lender will get the appraiser, they send you the paperwork back, you sign them, and it's over, right? In this case, I've seen clients where the lender would check on employment 24 hours before releasing the funds. That means that they have received a fully executed loan doc package. And before they release, and we are 12 hours, 24 hours to closing the sale, before they release the funds, they will call the employer to make sure that the person is still employed at the level, that they were employed before. Did they lose some hours maybe? And so it's very, very tricky right now, and you have to be very, very careful. If you are selling your property, who you sell it to make sure that you don't have those kinds of surprises when you are at the closing table. Same thing with unstable rental income market. If you are doing Airbnb, that is completely gone. It used to be, again, that a copy of the lease agreement would be enough to qualify the income from a rental income property. Not anymore, because we have issues with renters not being able to pay their rents because, like I said, VRBO, Airbnb are completely gone right now for the most part. So now you can only use 75, well, before you could use 75% of the lease agreement. Now you need to show evidence of a receipt of the last month in lieu of a lease agreement. So much stricter requirements. And you know the 6 by 36 rule for missed child support and spousal support payments. You have one of those that happens even if it is of mutual agreement. You know, sometimes the agreement will be that I will stop a spousal support or child support in order to pay the mortgage, and they both agree. It doesn't matter. Sorry about that. I had a feeling this would happen. So yes, even if one support payment has been missed, that will hinder the ability to qualify for a mortgage, and they'll have to show evidence of continuance for 36 months. So, and we've talked about, you know, potential credit issues. If because you lost your job, you now don't have, you've missed a payment or you've increased your debt, that is going to affect your your ratios as well. So this section is very dear to my heart. And you know, we may have some collaborative practitioners here. So I wrote orders there, translated, call it a settlement, but you get the idea. It is dear to my heart because having clear orders, clear instructions is true at any time, but it is especially relevant in today's circumstances with courts being backed up because of COVID, right? You don't know when your next hearing is going to be in front of the judge. And so it is very important to have things done right the first time. Judge Wiley in San Francisco was saying that ex partes are for real emergencies only. That's it. So as a family law attorney, you are juggling with a lot of different balls that go beyond purely legal matters. And I'm thinking specifically about you know, the advice of experts like mental health in child custody issues, financials who are CDFAs, forensic accountants, right? Quadros that live and breathe pension and the division thereof, right? Yet, I find that the selection of a real estate consultant is in most time an afterthought, and one in which attorneys are rarely involved. You know, I've heard many times, look, Harold, if they can agree on that and on which agent to use, and I don't have to get involved, let's go with that guy. And that's the extent of the reference or the extent of the analysis that is made of the person that they're going to work with. So what I would like to do is talk about what I am seeing, the orders that I've seen, and ways that we can write them in a way that bridges that divide between the family law and the real estate world that I live in. So I see orders that are written and that make perfect sense in the world of family law, keeping the guardrails, but those great intentions sometimes don't really translate in my world. And all it does is adding more time to the case, cost to the client. It generates frustration for you and for your client. And it is my contention today that there is an easier or a better way, a smoother path. So I would like to first talk about the real estate red tape, if you like, that govern the rules that govern my world, if you like. And the first one is fiduciary responsibility. It's part of the civil code. section, and it means that I owe the utmost care, diligent expertise of reasonable skill and care to my clients. So how can a court order impact that? Well, an order that says that a property needs to be listed for 3.5 million, when I know that the house won't appraise for a penny more than 3 million, as a real estate expert, I shouldn't have to take an overpriced listing. I wouldn't want to take an overpriced listing because I know that doing so is going to hurt the parties and hurt the objectives of what people are trying to achieve, right? It will be wasting their time, and it is a valuation of my fiduciary responsibility towards them. Another example that comes to mind is if you only have one spouse on title, that is a huge red flag. If you're an attorney and your client is not on title, understand that the realtor only has fiduciary responsibility to the client that is on title. The other one, in effect, doesn't exist. And that realtor cannot take instructions from the party that is not on title. So it's the same for escrow. It's the same for the title company. If you're not on title, it's going to be, you can't have an input on a lot of the very important decisions that are going to take place. So the contractual guidelines is another aspect where in the residential purchase agreement, there are a lot of timelines that are easily breached and especially in the family law context. Either the clients don't agree, there is a delay. I talked about an in-spouse that doesn't want to let an appraiser inside the house, that doesn't want to show the property to potential buyers, right? All of those are days that are being added that can put you in breach of contract with the purchase agreement that has been signed. Title underwriting is another one. The LSR or the court clerk signs on behalf of an uncooperative spouse, for instance, or for power of attorney, diminished capacity. All of that, the title company needs to be brought in before there is even an order so that it is done properly and things like an uninsured chain of title doesn't happen. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit in the section that I created about title considerations. But it is something to have on your radar when you're putting together those orders. Lending regulations as well. I've seen over and over again orders that order the spouse, that order a buyout, but there is no prior consideration on whether that spouse actually qualifies today for a mortgage. There's also, and this is where I can see the CDLP coming in as well, the Certified Divorce Lending Professional, helping those cases where somebody that knows what they're doing will be able to structure the settlements in a way that will work for the lender's ratio to work and for the transaction to move forward where otherwise it would have been stuck. So again, I highly recommend you get a CDLP involved early in the transaction so that you can have those conversations and you're not wasting time going down the avenue of thinking that the person wants to refi and says that they can, when really they cannot do that, really. MLS regulations are also important. The one that comes to mind in that case is the first right of refusal, something that is, again, I understand that it makes a ton of sense on the legal side, but it has serious repercussions on the ability of the realtor to sell the property, right? So you have an in-spouse, for instance, that wants to buy out the out-spouse or vice versa, and they want the right of first refusal to buy the property instead of the open market. That first right of refusal needs to be disclosed. If it's not disclosed, you violate the rules of the MLS and the MLS as a realtor, and you can be fined. By disclosing it, the effect that you're having is you're in effect chilling the activity of the sale, and you end up going against the objective that you had, which was to get as much money as possible, and gauge the value, the value of the property through what the market would offer. There are a lot of circumstances to consider. And on that specifically, I have put together a white paper a few years back for one of your colleagues, going inside and out on this topic. And I would be happy to share it with you if you are interested in that. Let's see, we'll pass real quick because time is running out. The items to include in your orders. I will say, I read an article this morning in the New York Times about COVID absolutism. This is not real estate absolutism. It depends, everything depends on the situation. But generally speaking, you want to have in your order the name of the realtor, his contact information. That's basic. You want to have who is responsible for the repairs, who has the authority to select the tradesman, who is going to make the repairs, who's going to pay for them. The division and distribution of proceeds, that is very important as well. This is sometimes we go to the title company at the 11th hour, and the distribution and division of proceeds still hasn't been decided. What if we have an in-spouse that doesn't have money to be to move out, right? And so there are special ways that can be written in the order so that the spouse can get some money out and move out. And all of this has to be negotiated prior to the property going on the market, ideally. The removal and division of personal property, again, it's happened many times where you are 2 days before close of escrow and it hasn't been decided who is responsible for what. So ideally, this should be decided before going to market, and for sure before close of escrow. The definition is you need to leave the property in broom clean. Broom clean. So no beds, no personal belongings, everything needs to be out. All names on titles are to sign. I've seen orders where the one of the person that was on title was being told not to sign anymore any documents. That is not, and there were clear reasons why that was happening in the legal sphere, I understood. But as far as the title company is concerned, as far as the real estate agent is concerned, it's not going to work. The parties are to defer to the listing agent on real estate matters. That's really the idea. The orders shouldn't limit the ability of the real estate agent to adjust with what the market is doing, because the wheels of justice move very slow, whereas the market in real estate moves very, very quickly. And so it is important to understand that having the trust in the professional you hire is important. But if you do have that trust and you can see that the gentleman or the lady that you're working with knows what they're talking about, then please let them do their job so that you can do yours and focus on other things. Yes, and I advise to include a real estate expert in the strategy early in the process so that we can address those potential issues that are coming up in a real estate transaction, whether it's on the emotional side, something that is blocking the transaction, or something very real, very physical. The items not to include, I've alluded to that. The price, scheduled price, the price increases. Unless, and I understand that sometimes the judge or even the attorneys want to have a price in there. I get it. If that's the case and you have to, please make sure that it's very recent. Like a price analysis that I gave you a month ago may not be current anymore, and the market may have moved up, which is good, or may have moved down, which you should be responsive to, right? And so if possible, avoid putting it there. If you have to, please check with me literally like a day before you're going to put it in the in the orders. Showing schedules, I wouldn't put that in there either. I saw an order where I think it was 72 hours that they were asking for before being able to show. You know, they wanted a notice of 24 hours, of 72 hours, I'm sorry. Those schedules should be negotiated between the in-spouse and the listing agent. The time frame, same thing. I see sometimes property to be listed by. When you say listed by, does it mean that a signed listing agreement needs to be signed, or that it has to go on the market by that date? Those distinctions are very important, and you know, listed by to me is not clear enough. And if it goes on the market and you put that date in there, do you know whether the property needs to be prepped? You know, are we going to put some paint? Are we going to clean the carpet? Are we going to do staging? What if there is a flood 24 hours before the property goes on the market? I tell you this not to be dramatic, but because this has happened to me. We were about to close on a property and we had a flood in the property. And so those things happen. And if you have to go back to court as an ex parte, are you going to be able to get an ex parte in time to sort this problem? Another thing that I see is how long the in-spouse is to remain inside the property after close of escrow. I've seen scheduled price drop every 30 days, every 90 days. Those, again, shouldn't be in the order. This should be decided by the market and a clear analysis of what your competition is doing on the market. I have other examples, but I think you're getting the point. And I've talked briefly about the right of refusal. As I said, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to give you that white document. Title consideration. This is something that I added at the request of Ariel. I don't know if I'll have enough time to go into it, but Angela, if I still have 5 minutes, I'm happy to dive into this. If you tell me we need to stop, I will follow your lead.
Please do address title considerations
Okay.
if you can, Harold. That would be wonderful.
Okay, happy to do so. So in title considerations, what I want to make sure is clear is that a title company basically sells insurance. That's all they do. They are selling an insurance policy, and they are guaranteeing that the purchaser will buy the property with a clear title, meaning free of any encumbrances, lien, floor pulls you may have, any of those things. You buy the insurance that the title will be clear. So just like lenders in the lending mortgage industry, title companies also have their underwriting policies, and they vary from one company to another. Some may be more lenient than others. Others are really, really strict. You need to find the one that is going to work with your situation. But I will say that one thing that is very common in the family law world is the interspousal deed transfer. And there, you know, I've seen some confusion between the interspousal deed transfer. Some people are telling me, well, a quitclaim deed is just the same. And I want to make sure that you understand that it's not. That in effect, they are achieving the same result, which is to pass title from one person to the other. But the interspousal deed transfer has some special provisions, tax provisions specifically, that are baked in that the quitclaim deed doesn't have. For instance, you're exempt from transfer taxes, and you're also exempt from a reassessment. Those are huge cost saving. I mean, it's huge. So please use the interspousal deed transfer, not a quitclaim deed. Know as well that any document that is recorded outside of a title policy being issued will be questioned by the title company and seen as fraudulent. What I mean by that is, if you're thinking about the world of probate or trust, a deed transfer between parents and children, right? So you have the mother is the only survivor, and you have 5 children, and one child receives the property. That's a red flag for the title company. Same thing for an interspousal deed transfer, right? One spouse is being taken away. I'm sorry, 1 second, please. So the interspousal deed transfer is very much the same thing, where you're taking away the rights of one spouse to own the property. And so their default is that it is fraudulent, and they want to show proof. And so it behooves you as the professional to make sure that those steps that are taking place when you're doing an intertransfer deeds transfer are very well documented. Number one, that the instructions within the orders are also extremely specific. And for instance, what I mean is the address. It sounds basic, but I have seen orders where it's just saying husband is awarded the property, and that's it. So you need to have the property address, especially if you have several properties, right? And each property needs to be handled differently. And you need to be able to show, I would recommend having uninsured deed affidavit signed as well, so that by both parties, so that you can show that, and notarized, so that you can show that the deed hasn't been transferred in a fraudulent way. Having the orders, of course, are going to help. So you need to make sure that when the property goes to sell 5 years down the road, that you're able to show to the title company. You need to be ready to have the orders, the final judgment, anything documenting the fact that this actually was negotiated and approved upon by both parties. The affidavit will help, but that's why I say notarize it, because the title company will also assume that if you forged the interspousal deed transfers, you might have forged the affidavit as well. So the bottom line is, when you're dealing with those things, whether you are the one that is writing an interspousal deed transfer, or you're the one that's representing a client that is going to sell a property where an interspousal deed transfer happened in the past, you need to be able to check on those things and have a professional, an expert, review the title, so that those red flags don't come and surprise you at the 11th hour when you are about to close, because your transaction will not close until those clouds have been removed. Let's see. So, in summary, I am cautiously optimistic. We don't have a 2008 crisis coming, just like I said before. The fundamentals are still very healthy. Historically, we have very low interest rates. We still have serious headwinds with consumer confidence that stumbles as COVID roars. Unemployment was up in January. We'll see how it goes down the road. We haven't recovered all the jobs yet. We're almost at 50%. So we still have a lot of healing to do in front of us. And each of your cases, each of your properties is unique. Please include a neutral, unbiased expert early on in this process. I will tell you that I organize every month a family CLE for those that are interested. Um, it's the fourth Wednesday of every month at noon. The cost is $55, but if you use the promo code that I have here, it's actually free. Last time we had Bill Eddy on high conflict personalities. We've talked about topics such as buying and selling a practice, things that are really relevant to your world. So feel free to join in. The website is there. It will be in the ends out. And that's it. We're here to help. Happy to help with fair market valuations, equity calculations, title search, review of the wording of orders. And I've been on Zoom meetings and conference calls to explore options with the parties and reach an agreement and get that case to close, whether it's a buyout or putting the property on the market. I'm here. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harold. I know we're running short on time, but we did have a few questions come through, and maybe we could take just a couple here. We had a couple of questions regarding your suggestion that there not be specific timeframes included in court orders. In lieu of that type of language, what kind of language do you suggest that attorneys try to include in orders to address and prevent a reluctant spouse from delaying the overall process?
So this is a fantastic question, and it's a situation that I run into very often, where you do have, usually the in-spouse that consciously or unconsciously is just sabotaging the transaction. And so the danger in putting that wording into the orders is that, as I said, you are tying up the hands of your real estate professional and not allowing him to flow with what the market is doing, right? And so I'll give you an example. Like end of last year, I had a client divorce situation, and they had to sell the property, a condo in downtown San Francisco. We didn't put anything in the orders, and one of the spouses was having issues about the sale of the property. And so we were aware of that going in, but we didn't put anything in the orders specifically. The way I handle this is I have a very clear process, coming in as the neutral, unbiased expert. My process deals with those situations. And so from the beginning, we're going to have a conversation with both spouses individually about what is expected of them when it comes to showing the property. And so the goal is to put in place the systems so that you don't have to jump in as the attorney and end up writing orders. If we get to the situation where it has been documented that, again, in my systems, every time there is a request for showing, for instance, the in-spouse has to approve it. And so the rules of engagement that I have is that I expect 90% of the showings to take place and be approved. If they don't, then we're going to have a conversation about what is going on. And if that's the case, then we'll escalate it to the attorneys. But it's a very different conversation when I'm coming to an attorney and I can say, look, this is what's been going on. I have 10 showings requests for that property, and 9 of them, 10 of them, 5 of them, whatever the number is, have been rejected for no good reason other than what I suspect being sabotage of the sale. Now, the attorneys have some ammunition to go back to their client and discuss it. At that point, if we're not able to resolve the situation, then it has to go to the others. Yes.
Thank you, Harold. And just quickly, we had a couple of questions also from those who are interested in the distinction between family law and non-family law appraisals. Could you touch on that quickly?
Yes, so the difference is very simple. The family law appraisal is what is the highest possible. That's the benchmark that they use. When you're using a traditional appraisal, they're using comparable methods. And so usually there is a difference between an appraisal that is made for family law. It's usually on the higher side, whereas a traditional appraisal will be lower. Then you also have the appraisals that are made for refi purposes, which usually come even lower because the lenders at that point are very conservative. So what I find is when I have an appraisal that is done on the purchase of a property, lately it's been very rare that we haven't been coming at the price point. Very, very rare. In a declining market, it's different, but right now, for the past 10 years, that's been the case. A family law appraisal would be above that. A refi appraisal would be below that.
Got it. And one last question, Harold. Could you please share the name of a certified divorce lending professional that you would recommend?
Yes. His name is Ross Garcia.
Perfect.
And I'm happy to, just reach out to me, and I'm happy to give you his contact information. And the reason why I think it is important, you're seeing specialization happening in the real estate field as well. So just as it is the case for me, what Ross does is truly unique, and his understanding. Instead of working with every lender that is available, he has in his portfolio probably like 10, 15 lenders that he's worked with that understand divorce and are comfortable with it. I have a client right now. She's a friend. It's not a divorce-related situation, but I started working with her, and she's a first-time home buyer, and he's going through a divorce. And unbeknownst to me, she had started looking for a property and had found an agent through Zillow. And she had started looking at properties. She doesn't understand the concept, of buyer's representation. It hadn't been explained to her. And so we're talking one day, and she tells me, you know what? I think I found a few properties that I like. So what do you mean? Like, you're looking at a house? And so in talking, she had told the buyer's agent that she was having a divorce. The buyer's agent was telling that to everybody, the lender that he had referred her to. And so the lender gets really nervous and was asking questions about her loan based on the divorce that hadn't even, she was still negotiating. As far as everybody knows, she's still married. She was thinking of buying the property after the divorce, but she was the one that was going to pay support for the husband. And so her ratios were going to change as well. And so this is what I mean, like, you need to be very strategic in the way you approach both the sale of the real estate and the financing of the buyout option or whatever else you're trying to put together, so that we can assist you if you're open to it, in being smart in the way that those settlements are structured. And Ross has some amazing presentation. We've done presentations together and CNE together, Ross and I, and he has some great content on work that he's done to shift somebody that at first sight from other traditional lenders wouldn't qualify for a mortgage and ended up being able to qualify for a mortgage. Him and I work hand in hand. This gentleman that I was telling you, the condo in downtown San Francisco, one of the issues was that the in-spouse was convinced that he was going to get a refi, and that's what he wanted to do. He had gone with 2 agents 1 year later, hadn't moved, and after the mediator ended up getting me involved, And within 2 days of talking to him and having him in touch with Ross, the two of us working together and making sure that we understood what he wanted and empowered him to find whether it was possible or not. 2 days later, he decided, you know what? The refi is not for me. We're going to put the property on the market, and we're able to resolve a knot that was blocking the transaction from taking place in a matter of a week. This happens a lot. If you're able to identify the pressure points within your cases, where we're able to allow those cases to close much smoother and without an involvement of the attorney that is now forced to do the job of a real estate agent. You have a lot of other things on your plate. You shouldn't have to decide that property needs to be open from that time and that time. And anyway, I can go on for a while. I think you get my point.
Well, with that positive anecdote, I think we will close today's program. On behalf of the real estate section, Harold, thank you so much for what has been an incredibly helpful and insightful presentation. And thank you too to all of our participants.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.